All right, everyone, welcome. Hi, I'm David Kaplan. I'm the editor-in-chief of Brand Newsroom, and I'm excited to welcome you all to Revolutionizing Publisher Revenue, a webinar brought to you by my friends at video advertising and monetization solutions provider, Aniview. I want you to get all of your questions ready in the chat me your questions, because for the next 45 minutes, we'll be exploring how the latest advances in AI are forcing massive change, as you all know, across the advertising landscape. So, again, David Kaplan, got that out of the way. I'd like to introduce the participants who will be running this webinar. We have Roy Cohen, CTO at Aniview, and his colleague Greg Smith will be kicking it off. Greg is the company's GM of North America. And this conversation is geared towards publishers and what you need to know about the latest techniques and methods in yield management, and what to expect from brands, agencies, and platforms as they try to meet the challenges associated with all the advances we've seen just this past year in AI. So with that, I will hand it off to Greg, who will be speaking about now and the future. Greg, here's to you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to start advancing those slides here. Really appreciate your introduction. And like David mentioned, he's going to take questions throughout the session. We look forward to a robust Q&A session near the end. I'm going to quickly just take you through the agenda. I'm going to go through kind of now and the future, take you through kind of a market outlook, what's going on in the industry across digital video, CTV, and programmatic. And I'll also talk about trends in the data landscape and how advertisers are using AI today. And then Roy's going to take you through, really get you into the heart of our presentation, discussing AI and data and how publishers can use it, and specifically also provide some next steps for publishers in terms of creating solutions moving forward. And then, like I mentioned, we'll go to Q&A. All right, so we're going to start with kind of now and the future. What's going on in the industry? What are the current trends in digital advertising, data, and AI? And as I mentioned, my name is Greg Smith. I'm the general manager of North America at Aniview. Very excited to be with you today. So, you know, a week doesn't go by where we don't see news in the ad tech sector that there are layoffs. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates in the U.S., and that's also been the case in several other parts of the world where interest rates have gone up. No surprise that basically brings down inflation and also brings down employment. And these headlines that you see here are indicative of many, many other companies in the industry. It's really been tough to see so many industry colleagues, let go. I look on LinkedIn often and see folks who've been with companies 5-6 years or even longer, moving on from their current employer. So, but even with all those layoffs, if you really look at the numbers, despite all that, the layoffs in the industry, digital ad spending is actually predicted to increase in 2023, albeit at a very low rate of only 8%, which is the lowest growth rate in recent memory. And I'll even go so far as to say, and through our own experience working with publishers, is that 8% rate doesn't necessarily mean that's a change in just Q1 and Q2. We saw some softness in Q1. We saw some softness at the beginning of Q2, in fact, as well. But we're starting to see the numbers kind of get back to normal and starting to grow where we'd like them to be moving forward. So, but it's been a rough road, and we're now in for the industry from a digital advertising perspective in single digits. That said, if you look at the longer term growth, looking at the eMarketer figures, ultimately kind of the new normal, to use a pandemic term, will really be kind of ad spend growth in digital of about 10% per year for the next several years. And ultimately, basically by 2026, we're expecting total digital ad spend to be $350 billion, which is quite substantial. And that will represent 80% of the total media market So essentially what was traditional will really only be 20% of the market in 2026. So I just talked about US digital advertising, and I will say I know we have a lot of international listeners on the line for our webinar. We're going to use US numbers in part because they're just a good proxy for the world. To some extent, the US is a bit of a leading market, and maybe that helps from kind of where the world is going. Then I'm going to dive into US video advertising, which is a subset of US digital advertising, and then go into another subset of CTV advertising and then CTV programmatic advertising as well. Now, I will say this, if you look at kind of the numbers in CTV in the United States, it's pretty well, the rule of thumb is that right now, about 90% of CTV advertising is based in the United States. That's obviously going to change over time, but the US has been very much a leader in CTV advertising adoption. And again, that should change. So if we kind of transition now into video advertising, the good news here is that it is growing at a greater rate than digital advertising. It should be growing at around 14 to 15% over the next 2 years. And ultimately, video will account for about a third of digital ad spend. And it will hit the $100 billion mark by about 2025. And now I had actually originally intended to actually show, now the next subset of video would be programmatic video, but it so happens that almost all video today is traded programmatically. It's over 95% of the market, and there's really no reason to think that that's going to change anytime soon. If you look at also just for clarity or definitional purposes, CTV is included in this video advertising number. And speaking of CTV, CTV ads will really be the fastest growing major ad channel in 2023 with 21% growth. And that will essentially represent about 10% of the total digital ad spend for the foreseeable future. Ultimately, that percentage will kind of inch up a little bit over time. CTV, one could say in some ways, is really the kind of the last major wave of transformational change in the digital advertising space. And CTV will account for about 30% of video spend in 2023. And again, in much the same way that all of video is traded programmatically, about 86% of CTV ads will be traded programmatically in 2023. And that'll be across open auction, private marketplace, as well as programmatic guaranteed, which is really getting a lot of traction in the market, particularly in the upfronts where a lot of TV networks and major cable providers are essentially doing these upfronts and doing these programmatic guaranteed deals as part of the upfronts, or now we're called kind of new fronts as well. So, it would really, I'm going to transition into, we kind of gone through the market numbers and the growth. I'm going to transition into kind of what's going on in data. And it'll be very hard to really talk about the data market without taking you through a quick primer on so many different aspects. So one of the things we think about are the three basic models of publisher data. So, basically, if you're a publisher, you can essentially be an open web publisher, where essentially you can leverage universal IDs and contextual targeting. You may be actually using a registration wall where ultimately you can get more information on your users, which in some ways can be transitioned or into like demographic data or behavioral data for additional targeting. And then the third group would be paywalls, which essentially are registration, and then you're also getting subscription revenue as well. So ultimately, you have access to open web data targeting as well as anything associated with registration walls as well. So for the purpose of this webinar, we're really going to focus on the open web solutions of contextual targeting in universal IDs. Another component is privacy legislation. It's always changing. GDPR really has been kind of the global standard and has been adopted globally, not just in the EU. And there have been a lot of enforcement actions. So the EU has actually fined entities over 2.4 billion euros by 2022. And if you look at Meta as just an example, they've been fined over 670 million euros themselves. But if you look at the US, there's actually no US federal legislation that's going on right now, but that doesn't stop the US Department of Justice or the Federal Trade Commission from filing lawsuits. For example, like the Coachella lawsuit that happened recently, though it was dismissed about a month ago. And although the US is not actually doing anything at a federal level, many of the US states, such as California, Virginia, Connecticut, Colorado, and Utah, have been enacting data privacy laws that give the user the right to their own, essentially access to their data, and allows them to delete their personal information and opt out of any kind of sale of that personal information as well. Then lastly, we would be remiss in not talking about technology changes too. In fact, many could argue that that's been even more of a driver in change today than even legislation. So the big kahuna really is the web, right? Google Chrome is really still the only major browser that supports third-party ad cookies, and that basically Chrome has about 60% of the market. Google plans to fully deprecate third-party cookies by the second half of 2024. But as many of you know, Google has kind of kicked the can down the road a couple of times before. So there's still, some speculation that it could even be later. And in fact, there might even be some sort of kind of antitrust concerns that Google has to think about when it does deprecate third-party cookies. In the mobile universe, Apple's been very lean forward with iOS and deprecated IDFA such that it can only be opt-in with version 14.5. And the opt-in rate has been pretty low. Seeing numbers like 20%, maybe 25%, but pretty significant. Google Android does not have an opt-in at this point. Right now it's opt-out. That could change certainly in the future. And the current opt-out rate is only about 1%. Then in CTV, there's really aren't any kind of significant standards. It's really based on the device. IP address is often used to identify households, not necessarily users, and contextual advertising is used. But the best way to get data on users is really through logins, right? So most of the operating systems because they have opt-in, they basically protect their data as essentially kind of like a walled garden to protect users' privacy, but at the same time use that data for targeting purposes. And then lastly, on data, the universal identifiers are becoming very, very popular. And that's not just for cookies on the web, that's for multiple devices. So it's really, think of it as kind of an identity solution in essence, and that's enabled through registration or paywalls. So, and ultimately, a new provider is basically putting in a new ID, and then they are linking that to a particular individual. We could do a whole nother webinar on the cost-benefit analysis of a paywall, but won't have the time to do it today. The level of how widespread these IDs are is still kind of an open case. I mean, the percentages range from what I've heard anywhere from 30 to 70%. It's still very early. Lots of different providers out there like UID 2.0 from the Trade Desk, Ramp ID from LiveRamp, ID5, Experian, TransUnion, Epsilon, Lexicon, several others as well. And what we would recommend, and Roy will get into this more, is that not necessarily using all of these providers, that would be exhaustive, but at least trying to use 2 or 3 of them. So in essence, that you've got kind of your bases covered, so that you can enable targeting, maybe not necessarily on your side, on the sell side, but advertisers, essentially, if you're putting bid requests forward, they can recognize the user and then bid on that impression and get you a higher CPM. Also, contextual targeting is taking off. I'll talk about that in just a second. And there are providers out there like Iris TV that make that happen. So the third thing I'm going to talk about, and this will be the last section for me, will be really just talking about trends in data and AI. So if again, kind of leveraging some of the great information in eMarketer, if you look at kind of attitudes about privacy and tracking, it's very clear that when digital executives have been asked, one of the top or two of the top issues that they focus on are evolving privacy regulations, as well as the use of cookies moving forward. And in essence, if they're kind of looking to solutions in a cookieless future, contextual targeting, as it turns out, becomes the number one solution on their mind. We'll talk more about contextual targeting in just a second. In fact, MediaOcean also did a survey of marketers, and in this chart to the left, everything adds up to, I believe, 100%. The use of, when they were asked basically, what are the initiatives that you're going to take on? What are the top initiatives that you'll take on to kind of move the needle for your business moving forward? Artificial intelligence and machine learning was ranked number 3, pretty significant. And in another survey to agency and brand marketers, when they were thinking about how are we going to use machine learning and artificial intelligence, again, contextual targeting was at the top of the list. And then lastly, when we look at those marketers that are already using AI, what are they essentially using it for? Many of these applications actually apply to advertising. So data integration, automation, customer identity resolution, programmatic advertising and media buying. And essentially there, we've already talked about contextual targeting, but also actually on the previous chart, another thing that was mentioned was dynamic pricing. So in the days, it used to be, I remember when I was first trading digital media, I would set floor prices and it was kind of a set it and forget it. But in today's world of AI, the floor prices can dynamically change, not even like on an hour or a day, but even within a minute. So that's another major change in our industry that can really help increase revenues. And then lastly, AI is being used for customer segmentation and lookalike audience modeling. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roy Cohen, our CTO, who's going to talk about AI and data for publishers.
Thank you, Greg. It was a great overview over the industry, where we were and where we are heading, and it looks very promising. So thank you for walking us through it. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm glad that you have joined our webinar, our first webinar, and I hope that we'll have more like this going forward. So my name is Roy. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Aniview, and today we are going to talk about data, AI, publishers, and optimization, and how they can utilize it in their vision of future ahead. So let's start with how AI works. AI, when you think about AI, is something that you can't, it's something that we can't really explain. Like we don't understand, we can't explain how it works. It's not like a logical if-else scenario that you can say to someone. So if you're trying to understand why and when it's raining, you're immediately going and finding a shelter. When it's itch you, you're starting to scratch the tip of your nose. You don't know what you actually did, but your brain is just reacting for an input. So this is a typical scheme of how AI works, and this is how AI, it's getting an input and it's acting upon it. So the cyclic situation of AI is how to collect the data first. You need then to clean it, then you're modeling it, and you are training your model. It's like your brain in a sort of alignment. Then you're using it to predict or to execute. Then you get a feedback and you iterate it all again. So the fundamentals of AI is that collect, clean, model, train, and predict, and go everything again and again and again. Everyone here probably have used ChatGPT. The first version was slightly bogus. You asked him question how to create a bomb, and he told you how to create a bomb. Then it iterated another cycle of not telling you how to to create a bomb. So you asked him, don't tell me how to create a bomb, and then he told you how to create a bomb. So this is like the training and how you teaching your brain, and it's also like human beings. So the most important part of AI is, when you look at it, is the data. If you don't have data, you can't learn anything, you can't teach anything, and you can't do AI. So, for example, again, ChatGPT took the entire web or internet data, fed their monster, I would call it, and this monster knows to answer a lot of things. They know to connect the dots, and it's just like a magic. It feels like someone is sitting out there and answering you. So data is like the king of AI. If you generate or harvest or creates as a publisher the right data points, you can then leverage them into your own benefits. So if you are a publisher, you have probably three ways or three solutions how to grab the data, or even how to see the data. One of them is to build and create your own data lake. Is probably the most expensive, time consuming. You need engineering efforts, you need a lot of skills inside your organization, and this is probably more related to Netflix, like CNN, to the big publisher that has the tools, has the um, the needs to make it. The second thing is like any, and this is due to probably deprecation of third-party cookies or third-party data, I would call it, is to have first-party data, is building your own registration wall, grabbing piece of information from your user. What do you like? Who are you? Just give me your email. Things that you can easily maintain. Every medium, small, medium, even long tail publishers can maintain and grab this information and then use it afterwards to create sort of an ID solution or identity across their publishing assets. And the third one is to leverage the data on the SSPs or DSPs or any advertising system that you're using, although it's not your data and sometimes you cannot be exposed to it. If you grab this piece, and it's hard to manage because you have many platforms, you need to consolidate the data, you need to grab it, you need to be a little bit more technical, but the heavy lifting is more or less done on the SSPs. And if they are open and giving you piece of information, you can get some data points about your audience. So probably the most familiar one is geographic, OS, and things like that are very common across the board. Again, you still need to consolidate everything. So having a piece of an ad server or something that consolidate or unified everything is really helping in ramping up fast the data that afterwards you can utilize for your programmatic buying, direct buying, or any other thing that you want, and we will talk soon. So Aniview, and I assume that a lot of other platforms that are utilizing optimization and AI and many things around it, we like collect the data or divide the data into three different pillars. The environmental variables, which is the device, geo, things that you can grab from the user engine, from the IP, something that you can understand like from the environment where you are. It can be country, OS, your device, things that are shared and can be, then you can automatically identify. The second is the user. A lot of time it's harvesting data, making models to look alike, getting first-party data, digesting first-party data. This is another pillar, like age, gender, likes, dislikes, what he watches, his habits, and things like that. And the last one that is divided into in the publishing world, it's divided into two sections. It's the content. Content can be the site content and can be the video content. Although we aim to make the site content and the video content relevant in the same way, sometimes you have content of one thing of sports and you advertising or showing content of different things. It may happen. It's not like the YouTube that it's a video portal. Publisher can sometimes show, CNN can show you, you can read an article about a news, and you will have videos that want to lure you into entertainment for something, or breaking news that are related to different things that you're watching from the article. So having these two data points will help you to leverage or to send more signals when you're interacting with your advertisers. Now we will go to the protocol, that how we connect everything. Everything at the end is connected with real-time bidding, or RTB, where open RTB, how we call it. This is the protocol where we are using to transact between the supply and the demand side. It's a protocol that always enhances itself, always the AIB, which is the International Advertising Bureau, always adding more pillars, more layers to share data, to share new information, to label things differently. So they have recently they changed the content, what is in-stream, outstream. Probably we can talk about it afterwards. So the work there is ongoing about the RTB protocol, and this is how you transact between the demand and the supply. We also have these days the header bidding protocol, which also opened the world into a way that a publisher can connect directly with even DSPs, SSPs, and it clear the supply chain and give you more information, because the data is being exposed. You have the auction that you send, auction floor price, and you have the bid of everyone that wants to bid on this placement. So with AI data and big data, you can use this to aggregate it, and the faster you aggregate it, the faster you can react and use it to dynamically use bid optimization. And bid optimization is a new thing that I don't know, started in recent years, 2-3 years ago, when header bidding was started, probably, and there is a lot of competition around the video display and placement, so digital ad spend. It gives a lot of clear or transparency about the bidding, the bid stream. And with AI and tools that can work not in a rule-based fashion, you can increase your yield, aim towards different KPIs, and leverage it to optimize everything. Before of it, everything should have, like, you needed to grab a lot of information that was not exist. It was in the reporting of the SSP. You need to feed. There were no model. There were no AI 3-4 years ago. It's just like it was a magic that no one knew about it. But nowadays it's live, and you have the data and you can utilize it. So how we use or how AI can be used, and Aniview is using it to improve the bid rates. On the left side, you can see that we have the demand sources. It can be in any type or any shape. It can be vast, VPaid, a pre-bid integration, RTB, SDKs. Each one of them has its own good thing and bad things. One is on the client side, one is on the server side, one gives you these signals, one is not agnostic. Vast is statically, you need to update it. You cannot dynamically change floor price, you need to update it on the other side. So everything here is how we blend or how we feed the data beforehand, and then we feed it with the contextual data that we talked about earlier with the 3 pillars. And then we have this machine that knows how to act upon each inventory request that you have, or each bid opportunity or inventory opportunity. So what we are doing here is that when we get a request, We are using AI to pick up the best demand sources, and best demand sources is not always the top performing ones. Sometimes it can be, I will give an example. We have a model that is reinforcement learning, and in reinforcement learning, you need to find the balance between exploration and exploitation. So we will talk about exploration and exploitation also with the bid dynasty, but you need to choose. If you have 100 sources and you always pick the top ones, you will never see the entire world. Okay, if you want to travel around the world and you only go to your favorite places, you won't see the entire world, and maybe you are missing something, and probably you are missing something. So after we picked up the right ad sources, we are going to choose the best price. What is the best price? With AI, it works differently than a rule-based. In a couple of slides, we will see how a rule-based is compared to AI. But what we are doing again is we have a goal. We are setting a goal. Goal can be revenue. Goal can be viewability. Goal can be any KPI that you decide. Sometimes they're collided. Sometimes they're mutual exclusive to each other. And when you set a goal, the AI itself chooses the highest bid price. And when we talk about supply opportunity, each supply is different. So if you have a rule-based solution, it probably will work in a 80-20 model that we'll talk in a second. But again, here you have the same exploration to exploitation thing, whether to explore more bid prices and to lose this specific opportunity, or whether to use the best thing that you think is okay for this particular request. If you will always use the same bid because you think it's the best, you will never know what you missed. Maybe it's $2, maybe it's 2.11, maybe it's 2.22. You don't know because you always think, okay, I'm the smartest person in the world. I will use only this bid price. And in AI, you need in reinforcement learning, you need to find the balance. Okay, let's give this specific request. Let's use it for exploration, and let's try for this user or this lookalike model. Let's try this time. Although 2.5 is the best, let's try 3.3. Maybe we got wrong. And this is how you explore the surface of the bid dynasty. This is a typical ecosystem of publishers that we have. Everything is managed in a unified box. We can give white labels, AI-based solution, dynamic unified auction, any type of targeting, player SDK. On the left side, you can see that you can manage any type of integration and demand. On the right side are the clients, and then you have the end users that actually watch the video or watching the publisher assets, the digital assets. So this is a scheme that is a typical for us. So what's next for you publishers, or how you can use the quick overview that we did about AI and how you can leverage into your own benefits. And data is, like we said in beginning, is the king. Like, what is your strategy here is, first, you can use this data to create private marketplaces. These days, the demand wants to get closer to the supply. They want to connect in a more harmonic way. If you know your audience, if you know your data, you know what you sell and you know where to find it. So yes, everything can be programmatic, but you can do it also with programmatic guarantee, prefer deals, give like first look. Not everything should stay programmatic, like pure programmatic without you being able to control or to label your audience. The second is header bidding, which is like good news, but old news. It can increase competition. You have more data. Everything is open. Like, it's the open protocol of the industry. Everyone can connect. Everyone can bid. Everyone can try. So this is how you can easily integrate your data with more header bidding solutions. And like we talked earlier, now that you know how to use the data that you grab, you can aim for better KPIs of advertisers. So if you know your audience and you know what they want, you can increase the KPIs of the advertisers. Sometimes you will make less ads, bring better user experience, but will get in favor good or better KPIs for advertisers that will afterwards will increase your RPM or eCPM that you have, and we'll give an example in a couple of seconds, in a couple of minutes. And then you have the first-party data or unified ID models that are like a black box to you and just can bring you more monetization solution. Greg has talked about it before. It's like utilizing someone's business that he will harness or harvest your data. Just give me the opportunity to harvest it, and I will make the business for you in the name of you inside the DSP. So this is also can be a good solution where it's not like selling your data, it's like more giving access to your data in a privacy manner way. So the optimization and tips for AI is like, first you need to identify what is your goal. What do you want to achieve? You want to increase revenues. It can be, it's good. It can be a lot of time. This is your main goal, and this is the main goal in life, probably. Sorry for saying it, but most of people, this is, and most companies are, we are a free world and economical company. Everyone, you want to improve the revenue, but sometimes in order to improve your revenue, you can also improve your experience or user experience, and you can see it with Netflix, or you can see it with big publishers, and you can see it, even we can see it sometimes in medium and small publishers where they change the way they think, and instead of putting everywhere ads and then they get deductions or no one wants to bid it, they make their inventory a little bit more unique. So instead of making 10 commercials, they're making only 5. And I went to the higher bound. I don't want even to take that. Netflix will probably do a 15-second maximum commercial that will cost a lot of money. Second thing is to evaluate your existing ad operation, what you need to address, how you need to address to comply with the AIB, Advertising Bureau, and data regulation. These are the most important things with AI optimization. And don't forget, because we are still acting with data, you need to comply with everything. So our suggestion is also to be regulated and to work by the book, and don't try to do things that you don't want to do. And the most important thing is to explore, innovate, try, test, monitor. There are many solutions, and we can also bring solutions to you publishers to try and experiment with new AI tools that, and walk you through and show you the data points as it goes by. Sometimes AI, it's not for the first time that you turning on the lights and then everything is booming. Sometimes you need to work on the data and to see it in action, to understand how it really impacted your inventory. So we'll give a solution with the publisher that before we finish, we gave a solution with a publisher that we did a test. The test was more or less behind the scenes. We wanted to test it internally. So we took a human being, we took another person, which is a human being that can act probably a couple of times a week, change floors, change priorities of demand. It's not like a 24/7 machine. The second test was versus an automation, rule-based changes. It can be like rule-based of getting the data, dividing it by two, setting the floor price, changing the rules, changing the priority. There are many rule-based, the industries, like there are endless rule-based solutions that I heard of and I saw and also implemented during the years that you can do with automation. Probably it's like, I will finish in 2 minutes. Probably it will take like, it will make changes to 5 to 30 changes per day, so it is limited. And the last one is AI. AI is like, when we saw it, it can be like 100 and even thousands of changes during an hour. So what we saw at the end when we compared between them is that the AI always trained himself. I wouldn't say that it always improved, but it always changed. You saw that there is like a brain behind it, and also a brain does mistakes. Also, the AI do flaws, but he can fix them as he goes and quickly. We saw a 34 increase in fill rate and increase all over ECPM as well. So it's very strange that we increased the value for the inventory and also got more ads. It's like not reasonable. And in overall, we saw around 200 improvement in revenue. So this was amazing. Thank you for participating in this webinar. So David, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Roy, thank you so much. And yes, this is obviously a perfect time to explore. And yeah, definitely more more hand claps for both you, Roy, and for Greg. And I do, as I said, I want to give all of you, as many of you as possible, a chance to ask some questions. And I believe we have one coming in. So just chat me the question if you can, and I will relate those. I saw one hand raised, so please, yes, send those in the chat, and I will look for those. But just to get started with both you, Roy and Greg, yeah, one of the, Greg, you started off talking about a lot of the layoffs that had also been occurring for the past few months. I think the big question, what everyone has been worrying about and thinking about with regard to AI, are we all going to lose our jobs? No, it's really, what is the human centric role that publishers and their sales teams can play when it comes to managing bid and yield optimization. Greg, we can start back
Yeah,
with you, but
yeah.
love to hear both of you.
It's interesting, David, as you asked that question, I had a flashback to Programmatic IO, and there was a panel on AI, and the question was, are we going to lose our jobs, right? And I think the good news is no. Ultimately, AI can be used so that all these kind of tedious, repetitive tasks that we do don't have to happen. So again, I use the example of like setting floor prices, in your online auctions. That is something that it is tedious. I remember actually long ago when I was at Tremor Video, setting floor prices almost on a daily basis and being able to create an enormous amount of value by doing so. But if I could have had a system do it for me, I could have spent my time doing even other things to create value. And I think that's the key point here. Not to think of it as, oh, AI is going to take away my job. It's going to actually help me do repetitive things that I don't really like to do so that I can kind of use my mind to create value elsewhere.
Great. Roy, anything you care to add to that point?
Yeah, I think Greg has nailed it. Like, we will work. Unfortunately, we are going to work. And the AI is not going to take it from us. It's just going to help us with the things that we can do as a standalone solution. And as human beings, we can focus on how to innovate, how to create connections, how to take care of business, things that it's not that AI won't be able to do it, but you need the human touch here. So I still think that we have a value.
Right. Well, all good points. I am seeing hands raised, but I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I will look to that, just to resolving that issue. Just one more question from me, at least. Um, you know, again, for both of you, what are the common pitfalls or mistakes that you're seeing publishers making, or things that they should maybe avoid at this moment of exploration when integrating AI into their the bid and optimization and yield optimization strategies?
I'm going to take a little different tact on answering that question and focus on kind of what can you do to maybe not what are the pitfalls, but what are the upside, right? And I'll focus probably on the data. We talked about it, but I really encourage publishers to not only focus on, there are two components here. How do you organize your own data so that you can help monetize your own site? And that could be contextual. Roy, I thought, had a really great slide kind of talking about all the different things that you can do, organizing your content to the extent that you can actually, leverage data of users who want to one particular section, but they're on another section. Maybe, an advertiser wants to find that user again based on their previous click stream experience. So it's not only just the sell side or in the publisher side, but enabling essentially all these different identifiers that will be hooks that advertisers need because they want to do their own audience targeting as well. So I mentioned it earlier, but I really recommend, testing, working with 2 or 3 different providers if you're not doing that today, really think about it. And in many cases also, it's really not that expensive, particularly for the sell side, to enable these IDs. For the most part, generally speaking, SSPs or DSPs or the advertisers are actually paying, kind of the incremental CPM, not necessarily the publisher. So something you really should consider if you're not doing today.
Yeah, and I have another point is that publishers often afraid to risk their current assets. This is again exploration and exploitation. It's like what we are doing with AI. This is the same problem with business, with any business and publisher business as well. You have the regular revenue stream, you know what you're worth, but you don't know. Sometimes you should take the risk, and when you see the right partner, you need to test it. And if he has probably a good value proposition, I'm not telling you try and test everything all the time. It doesn't make sense. We don't do it. No one should do it. But if you think that you have the right opportunity or the right partner, that you think that he has a good assets, it's worth exploring the environment.
Okay, great. So I am going to allow, since the chat questions are coming in, I'm just going to turn your mics on individually, of course. So Martin, I believe you raised your hand, and I'm going to give you the floor to ask your question. Martin, are you there? Thanks for waiting. And maybe that's not working. So we'll keep trying to get your questions in. I again really appreciate the patience here. Um, what are the potential risks, maybe, and limitations associated with relying maybe a little too heavily? We all kind of think like, oh, AI can kind of take over right now. Is there any risk of that at this moment? Again, as we're really in this moment of exploration. Roy, Greg, what are you seeing there?
So
go ahead, Roy.
Thank you, Greg. So AI is still it's in the beginning. Like we've just started. So jumping and making everything with AI is not like AI can solve everything and this is the solution for everything at the moment, right? It's the beginning of something that can be utilized in a great way, but with great power also comes, the drill, great responsibility. So it's not that it is going to fix everything. It's not that it's going to solve everything at the moment, but there are some specific cases like bid optimization, choosing things, lookalike models, things that we already have done in the past that now are being done in a much better way, in an enhanced way. So this is where I can see that it will be good to use AI. Also in creatives and how advertisers will utilize AI. This is going to be the next fundamental change in how things work. I read today, for example, that games. I'm a gamer and I like to see my kids play games, and I saw that Nvidia, for example, the next gaming solution or games that are going to be developed, will the AI will generate the game during while you play. So this sounds like a revolution. This is the same that is going to be with creative and ads. Imagine that ads would be able to create dynamically, especially for you. Yes, Greg.
Yeah, I agree with Roy. I mean, you just got to pick your spots. That's the most important thing. You can't test everything, but figure out where you think AI can make the greatest impact on the revenue of your business, and then just be really focused on kind of the test and learn phase to make sure that it's creating incremental value, and so that you can actually understand. As much as machine learning is doing it for you, it's still okay to ask the why, so to speak, and try to figure that out as well.
Good points. And again, to everyone, thanks for the patience on on asking your questions. Send those in the Q&A tab at the top right, and those will get to me. So I do have a question from Carla, who asks you and Roy, Greg, is it possible to include an optimized pre-bid server side, or just pre-bid client side for programmatic demand? Any thoughts there?
So good question.
Thanks, Carla.
Basically, thank you, Carla, and it's a good one. Basically, you can use both sides as long as they have the data, and we know they have the data. They're sharing the data, so you can leverage an AI or anything that generates data, and Prebit server also generates the same data. So you can use AI and optimize the bids and get the same view as what you see in the client. You can get it on the server. So Prebid server and client as a whole is a more transparent solution that works great with AI and with things that requires data.
Um, and again, you have still a few more minutes, so please do try to get your questions in. Greg, to go back to something you had said early on in the presentation you were looking at, that apart from the layoffs, there was still the sense that digital advertising is still growing, albeit at a slower rate than in the past. And was wondering, but is that really just reflecting the shift? Is it because CTV is really coming on strong now, or is that really just about the law of large numbers, maybe, in terms of what you're seeing there?
Yeah, good question. I think there is certainly I hate to put it this way, but the pandemic probably helped CTV and accelerated viewership. One of the things that we think about a lot, because we run an exchange, is if revenue grows, let's say 8%, but what is that driven by? Is that driven by pricing, or is it driven by impression growth? And generally speaking, it's being driven for the most part by impression growth. Which is a good thing, right? I mean, CTV eyeballs are, that's growing quite significantly. In fact, actually, as part of this presentation, we were even thinking, how do we get a proxy for impressions? Probably use something like time spent. We just didn't have the time. We didn't feel comfortable kind of converting that into CPMs. But I think ultimately what's going on right now is, for the most part, every medium is either at parity or growing in terms of, we're still consuming all this digital media. It's just that marketers are, in some cases, their budgets might be getting cut back a little bit. So they're just getting very, very price conscious. So CPM may be, either flat or in some cases going down, even though essentially unit volume is going up.
Hmm. And Roy, wanted to ask this question to you. Again, you went over so many great details in your presentation, but it was very also like kind of future forward. But for right now, what advancements off the top of your head, looking at your presentation, can we expect for targeting capabilities for programmatic advertising, and in particular for video in the near term and as well as the future?
So if we are talking about AI, I don't think that will be any revolutionizing changes.
Mhm.
It's only going to be in how you segment your audience, how you you make your models look alike, how you target them. So it's more on the DSP side rather on the publisher side, because they will, with the lack of data and with deprecation of third-party cookies or third-party data, it will be hard for them to create the map or the graph of the users and households. And if we are talking about CTV, we don't know exactly who is watching. It can be like a 5 years old kid, and on the same time, it can be a 65, his grandfather or something like this. So on those areas, there will be a lot of things in targeting and how AI can implement behavior in terms of reaching the audience and understanding the user, because you don't have the data. Only if you have the first party data, it will help you. And also, first party data don't necessarily label you as a user, it's label you as a household. So mobile phones with some technology aspects and some understanding how to connect with engaging the user will help to change how you target and how you interact with your users.
Great. And we did get one question showing up in the chat just now. This is kind of Joe asking a process question. I think kind of alluding to a few months ago. I think we all saw the story about how Samsung engineers had maybe accidentally loaded proprietary software information into one of the, I don't know if it was ChatGPT or one of the AI engines. And there's always this fear of, as you both said, you have to really train these systems, but also, Joe asks, does it mean that they also get a portion of your data, and how do publishers protect themselves while also training these systems?
It's good question. So first of all, as a publisher, it's your decision whether you want, it's your data. So if it's in your commercial or terms of use of your site and you get the consent, it's your data, your first party data. You can decide if you want to share it with ChatGPT or not. Aniview is not doing it, and we won't do it. This is like a public or proprietary product that we can't feed the animal, I would call it, with data that is sort of not ours, without any consent of our publishers and publishers' users, etc. So from the beginning, we won't take this approach, because this requires too many consent from too many people, from too many companies, that we will not go through that direction from the beginning. We are developing our own AI, our own algorithms, or there are public algorithms. We can talk about them. Amazon just released an open one, and you can train your models with your engineers. So we are not sharing the data. We are not using or uploading data to ChatGPT or to any type of public commercial engine. So I wouldn't recommend as a company to do it. As a publisher, if you want and you go buy the book and get the consent from your user and terms of condition, you can try and play with it. It won't be easy, but you can try it.
There you go. Well, Roy, thank you so much. Greg, thank you as well. I believe we are out of time. So again, one more round of virtual hand claps to both of you. Obviously, if any of you have any other questions, certainly check out Aniview's page. And certainly I can say Greg and Roy are very accessible and love to answer the questions. So Greg, Roy, thank you so much. And thank all of you. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.